I watched my best friend stand on stage and introduce her novel to a room full of literary elites. The same novel I had poured my heart and soul into for 3 years. The same novel she had stolen from my laptop while I was in the shower. What she didn't know was that I had already spoken to her publisher before the launch party, and I had brought receipts. 6 months earlier, life had seemed so full of promise. I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop, the one with the chipped blue mugs and the barista who knew my order by heart. Outside, autumn leaves swirled across the sidewalk as I typed the final words of my manuscript. 3 years of early mornings, late nights, and countless drafts had culminated in this moment. I remember pressing save, then closing my eyes and letting out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Is it done?" The voice belonged to Mia, my best friend since college. She slid into the seat across from me, her sleek designer bag contrasting with my worn laptop case. Mia worked in publishing, not as an editor or agent, but in marketing. She understood the industry in ways I didn't, and had been my sounding board throughout the writing process. "It's done," I confirmed, turning the laptop toward her so she could see the completed document. 342 pages. I can't believe it. "Let me be the first to read it," she said, her smile just a bit too wide, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "I can give you feedback before you start submitting to agents." I hesitated. Something in her tone felt off, but I dismissed it as my own insecurity. "Of course. You've been with me through this whole journey." That night, Mia came over to my apartment. We ordered takeout, opened a bottle of wine, and I handed her my laptop. "The file's on the desktop. Just don't spill anything on my keyboard." "You know me better than that," she laughed, balancing the computer on her knees as she sipped her wine. "Go take a shower. I'll get started while you relax." The hot water felt good after a day hunched over my laptop. I stood under the spray longer than usual, letting the accomplishment wash over me. I had written a novel. A real, complete novel. Whatever happened next, whether it was published or not, no one could take that away from me. Or so I thought. When I emerged from the bathroom, Mia was typing furiously on her phone. My laptop was closed beside her. "What did you think?" I asked, toweling my hair dry. "I only read the first chapter," she said, not looking up from her phone. "But it's good. Really good." Something about her tone made me pause. "Just good?" "No, it's great," she corrected quickly. "I need to finish it at home, though. Do you mind if I email it to myself?" "I already shared the Google Doc with you last week," I reminded her. "Remember? So you could see my progress?" Right, she said, gathering her things with unusual haste. "I forgot. I'll read it this weekend and give you notes." As she left, she hugged me tighter than normal. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "This is going to change everything." She was right about that. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I started researching literary agents, crafting my query letter, and polishing my synopsis. Mia became increasingly difficult to reach. Her texts were brief, her calls went to voicemail, and she canceled our weekly coffee dates with vague excuses about work being crazy. I tried not to read too much into it. Everyone got busy sometimes, and Mia had mentioned her company was preparing for a major book launch. Still, her absence felt conspicuous just when I needed her support most. Then came the email that made my stomach drop. "Hi, Sarah. I saw on Twitter that Mia Hamilton just signed a book deal with Meridian Press. Isn't that your friend from college? The one who works in marketing? I didn't know she was a writer too. Congrats to her." The message was from another college friend who had moved across the country. I stared at it, confusion giving way to a creeping suspicion Mia wasn't a writer. She had never expressed any interest in writing fiction. She read manuscripts for work, gave feedback, planned launch events, but she didn't write. With trembling fingers, I opened Twitter and searched for her name. There it was, an announcement from Meridian Press welcoming exciting new voice Mia Hamilton and her debut novel, The Forgotten Hour. My novel was called The Forgotten Hour. I couldn't breathe. This had to be a mistake, a bizarre coincidence. I clicked on Meridian's website and found a press release with more details. Hamilton's stunning debut explores memory, identity, and the thin line between love and obsession in a small coastal town. That was my book, my story, my characters, my 3 years of work. I called Mia immediately, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Need to talk to you about your book deal. Call me ASAP." 3 hours later, my phone pinged with her response. I was going to tell you. It happened so fast. Let's celebrate next week when things calm down. No explanation, no acknowledgement, just the casual response of someone who hadn't stolen their best friend's life's work. I spent the night alternating between sobbing and rage scrolling through social media, where Mia was already giving interviews about her creative process and the inspiration behind the novel. In one particularly galling quote, she claimed the story came to her like a vision during a weekend retreat last year. The weekend retreat we had taken together, where I had outlined the entire plot for her over wine by the fireplace. By morning, I'd moved past shock into a cold, clear fury. I needed proof that the book was mine. I opened my laptop and went to my Google Docs. The manuscript was there, with its history of edits and comments dating back 3 years. I downloaded everything, every draft, every note, every timestamp showing my work. Next, I pulled up emails between me and my beta readers, 5 friends who had given me feedback on early drafts. Their responses contained specific plot points, character names, and direct quotes from my manuscript. I saved those too. I even had photos Mia had taken of me writing in various locations over the years, which she had captioned things like, "My brilliant writer friend, hard at work," and "Sarah's novel, coming along nicely." She had posted these publicly, creating a timeline of my project that predated her supposed vision. Armed with evidence, I contacted a literary attorney. The consultation fee took nearly half my savings, but the advice was worth it. Document everything, notify the publisher directly, and prepare for a potential legal battle. Publishers don't want plagiarism scandals, the attorney explained. If your evidence is solid, they'll likely drop her rather than risk the publicity nightmare. I was drafting an email to Meridian Press when a glossy invitation arrived in my mailbox. Meridian Press invites you to celebrate the launch of The Forgotten Hour by debut author Mia Hamilton. Handwritten at the bottom in Mia's familiar scrawl. Couldn't have done it without you, my inspiration. Can't wait to thank you publicly. Love, Mia. The audacity took my breath away. She was inviting me to the launch of my stolen book and planned to thank me as her inspiration. This wasn't just theft. It was a power play, a way to establish her version of events publicly while reducing me to a footnote in my own story. That's when I knew I wouldn't just send an email to her publisher. I would attend the launch. I would let her see me there, let her think she had won, let her believe I was supporting her deception. And then, I would watch her world collapse. The 2 weeks before the launch were the longest of my life. Mia sent several texts, each more presumptuous than the last. Wear something fabulous to the launch. Press will be there. Can't wait for you to see the book. The cover is gorgeous. My editor says this could be the breakout novel of the year. I responded with brief non-committal messages, just enough to make her think I was coming to terms with her betrayal, perhaps even resigned to it. Meanwhile, I compiled my evidence into an irrefutable package. I met with the attorney again, who helped me draft a formal letter to Meridian's legal department. I sent it 3 days before the launch, timing it so they would receive it but not have enough time to cancel the event. The attorney assured me they would need time to investigate before taking action. They'll likely pull her aside at the event, he said, or immediately after. They won't want to create a scene, but they'll want to address it quickly. The night of the launch arrived. I dressed carefully in a black dress that projected confidence and professionalism. I tucked a USB drive containing all my evidence into my clutch, along with a small blue coffee mug charm, a gift from my late grandmother, who had always encouraged my writing. It had been on my keychain throughout the writing process, a small talisman of support. Tonight, I needed that reminder more than ever. The event was being held at an upscale bookstore in the city. When I arrived, the space was already crowded with publishing professionals, literary figures, and what appeared to be friends and family of Mia's. A large poster displayed the cover of my book, now hers, with her name emblazoned across the top. I spotted her immediately. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair professionally styled, a glass of champagne in hand as she laughed with a circle of admirers. She hadn't seen me yet. I made my way to the bar, ordered a sparkling water, and positioned myself where I could observe without being immediately noticed. A man in an expensive suit approached me. "Sarah Keller?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Michael Brennan, legal counsel for Meridian Press. We received your letter and documentation. Is there somewhere we can speak privately? After the presentation, I said firmly. I'd like to hear what Mia has to say first. He looked uncomfortable, but nodded. We'll be addressing this matter tonight, one way or another. Just so you're aware. As he walked away, Mia finally spotted me. Her face went through a remarkable series of expressions. Surprise, unease, then a manufactured delight as she excused herself from her group and made her way toward me. You came, she exclaimed, embracing me. Her perfume was overwhelming, expensive, and unfamiliar. I wasn't sure you would. I wouldn't miss it, I said, my voice steady. It's not every day your best friend publishes a novel. Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or guilt. But it was quickly replaced by the same confident gleam. I have so many people to introduce you to. My editor thinks this could be optioned for film. Can you believe it? Remarkable, I said, especially for a first attempt at writing. She laughed too loudly. Well, you know I've always had stories in me. I just needed the right inspiration. She squeezed my arm, which I'll be acknowledging in my speech, so prepare to be embarrassed. Before I could respond, the bookstore owner tapped a microphone, calling for attention. Mia gave me another squeeze. That's my cue. Find me after? Oh, I'll definitely find you after, I promised. The presentation began with the publisher introducing Mia as a fresh new voice in literary fiction. Mia took the microphone, radiating confidence as she thanked everyone for coming. She spoke about the writing process, describing struggles and breakthroughs that were mine, not hers. She talked about characters she hadn't created and plot points she hadn't conceived. And I have to give special thanks to my dear friend Sarah, she said, gesturing toward me. Heads turned. Who has been my biggest cheerleader and inspiration throughout this journey. Her belief in me made this book possible. The crowd applauded. I smiled tightly, feeling the weight of the USB drive in my clutch. After reading a passage from the novel, my words in her voice, Mia invited questions from the audience. Most were softballs about her influences and writing routine, which she answered with practiced humility and completely fabricated anecdotes. Then an older woman near the back raised her hand. I'm curious about your creative process. How long did it take you to write this book, from concept to completion? Mia smiled. About a year, though the idea had been percolating for longer. Once I started writing, it just poured out of me. I couldn't help myself. I raised my hand. Mia's smile faltered slightly when she saw me. Yes, Sarah? I'm curious about that timeline, I said, my voice clear and calm. Because I distinctly remember you telling me 3 years ago about your marketing job being so demanding that you couldn't write a grocery list, let alone a novel. What changed? A nervous laugh. Well, priorities shift. When inspiration strikes, you make time. Inspiration, I repeated. Like our weekend at Cedar Lake Resort, where I outlined this entire plot for you. The room had gone very quiet. Mia's smile became fixed. Sarah has been such a supportive friend through my writing journey. She's a bit of an aspiring writer herself, so we've had many creative conversations. Aspiring, I echoed. Interesting choice of words for someone who has read every draft of this novel as I wrote it over the past 3 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I noticed Michael Brennan, the Meridian lawyer, moving closer to the front of the room. Mia's laugh had an edge of panic now. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we should discuss this privately. Why privately? I asked, pulling out my phone. I have nothing to hide. For instance, here's an email you sent me last year, commenting on chapter 17, where you suggested I change the protagonist's decision about the lighthouse. You wrote, and I quote, "This feels out of character for Claire. She would never abandon the lighthouse after what happened with her father." I looked up. Interesting feedback from someone who claims to have written the character herself. The murmurs grew louder. Mia's face had lost all color. Or how about these? I continued, scrolling through my phone. Photos you took of me writing this book, which you posted on Instagram with captions like, "My talented friend working on her novel and can't wait to read Sarah's book when it's published." Mia stepped away from the microphone. This is ridiculous. Sarah's confused or jealous. Am I confused about the Google Doc history showing 3 years of my edits, or the emails from beta readers responding to my drafts? Or perhaps the outline I presented at my writing group last year, which 3 published authors can verify? Michael Brennan stepped forward then, taking the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we need to conclude this evening's event. Ms. Hamilton, we need to speak with you immediately. The crowd erupted in confused chatter. Mia looked wildly around the room, as if searching for an escape route. When she found none, she turned to me, her facade crumbling. You don't understand, she hissed. I improved it. I have connections you don't have. This way, the book actually gets published instead of sitting in your drawer forever. And you get the credit, I said quietly. And the advance. And the film option you mentioned? How convenient. I was going to help you with your next book. Get you introduced to my editor. There is no your editor, Mia. You don't have an editor anymore. As if on cue, a woman I recognized as the editor from the introduction approached, her expression grim. Ms. Hamilton, we need to speak privately. Now. Mia was escorted to a back room, still protesting that there had been a misunderstanding. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with the unexpected drama. Several journalists who had come to cover a routine book launch were now frantically taking notes or making calls. Michael Brennan approached me again. Ms. Keller, we'd like to speak with you as well, if you don't mind. The next hour was surreal. In the bookstore's office, I met with Brennan, the editor, and the publicity director. I showed them my evidence, the drafts, the timestamps, the correspondence. They examined everything carefully, occasionally exchanging glances. This is unprecedented, the editor finally said. I've never seen such a blatant case of plagiarism. Not plagiarism, I corrected. Theft. She didn't copy my work. She took it whole cloth and put her name on it. Yes, the editor agreed, looking troubled. That's exactly what she did. Brennan cleared his throat. Meridian Press will, of course, be voiding Ms. Hamilton's contract immediately. The books haven't shipped to stores yet, so we can halt distribution. As for you, Ms. Keller, we'd like to discuss the possibility of publishing your novel, properly attributed, if you're interested. I touched the small blue coffee mug charm in my pocket. I'll need to review any offer with my attorney, and I'd want a public statement from Meridian acknowledging what happened. Of course, the publicity director said quickly. We'll need to get ahead of this story anyway. Literary theft makes for juicy headlines. When I finally left the bookstore, it was past midnight. The street was quiet except for a lone figure sitting on a bench near the entrance. Mia, still in her cream suit, though it looked rumpled now. Her makeup was smeared from crying. She looked up as I approached. They canceled my contract. They're making a public statement tomorrow about what I did. Her voice broke. My career is over before it began. Your marketing career, maybe, I agreed. Your non-existent writing career is certainly over. How did you know? She asked. How did you know I took it? Because I know my own work, I said simply. And because you made a mistake. You didn't just steal my manuscript. You stole my title. A title I created because it had personal significance to me. The forgotten hour was what my grandmother called the time she spent writing each day, time that belonged only to her. You couldn't have known that. It was never in the manuscript itself. She stared at the sidewalk. I never thought you'd find out. You never seemed to believe in your writing. I thought you'd just give up. That was your biggest mistake, I said. Assuming I wouldn't fight for what's mine. I left her there on the bench and walked to the subway, feeling lighter than I had in months. 6 weeks later, Meridian Press published The Forgotten Hour by Sarah Keller. The press release mentioned the unfortunate incident with the previous announcement, assuring readers that the true author had been identified and contracted. The book received positive reviews, with several critics noting the authentic voice and emotional depth. One reviewer wrote, Keller writes with the confidence of someone who knows her story needs to be told, and the patience of someone who waited for the right time to tell it. Mia eventually left the publishing industry. I heard she moved to another city to start over. We never spoke again, though sometimes I see people reading my novel on the subway or in that same coffee shop with the chipped blue mugs, and I think about how differently things might have turned out. I still keep that little blue coffee mug charm on my keychain, not as a reminder of betrayal, but of what happens when you stand up for your work and your worth. My second novel comes out next spring. I wrote it at the same coffee shop, but this time when I typed the final words and pressed save, there was no one watching over my shoulder. Just me, my story, and the certainty that it belonged to me alone.